Welcome to Pastor Andrew's Inspirations. If you enjoy these videos, please click on the red button below the video and click on the bell for more. Welcome to our online church, a congregation made up of many from around the world. No offering is necessary. Subscribing and watching videos will keep us alive under God's watchful eyes. Today, we will be continuing the biblical names of the Bible, starting with B. This is part 4. Bar-Jonah. Bar-Jonah is the son of Jonah, the patronymic of Peter in Matthew chapter 16 verse 17 and John chapter 1 verse 42. Barnabas. Barnabas, born Joseph, was, according to tradition, an early Christian, one of the prominent Christian disciples in Jerusalem. According to Acts chapter 4 verse 36, Barnabas was a Cypriot Jew, named an apostle in Acts chapter 14 verse 14. He and Paul, the apostle, undertook missionary journeys together and defended Gentile converts against the Judaizers. They traveled together, making more converts, and participated in the Council of Jerusalem. Barnabas and Paul successfully evangelized among the God-fearing Gentiles who attended synagogues in various Hellenized cities of Anatolia. Barnabas' story appears in the Acts of the Apostles, and Paul mentions him in some of his epistles. Although the date, place, and circumstances of his death are historically unverifiable, Christian tradition holds that Barnabas was martyred at Salamis, Cyprus. He is traditionally identified as the founder of the Cypriot Orthodox Church. The feast day of Barnabas is celebrated on June the 11th. Barnabas is usually identified as the cousin of Mark the evangelist, on the basis of the term anepsios, used in Colossians 4, which carries the connotation of cousin. Orthodox tradition holds that Aristobulus of Britannia, one of the 7th disciples, was the brother of Barnabas. Acts chapter 11 verse 24 describes Barnabas as a good man and full of the Holy Spirit and of faith. Bartholomew. Bartholomew was one of the 12 apostles of Jesus, according to the New Testament. He has also been identified as Nathanael or Nathaniel. He appears in the Gospel of John when introduced to Jesus by Philip, who also became an apostle, in John chapter 1 verses 43 to 51. Although many modern commentators reject the identification of Nathanael with Bartholomew, according to the Synaxarium of the Coptic Orthodox Church of Alexandria, Bartholomew's martyrdom is commemorated on the first day of the Coptic calendar, or the first day of the month of Thout, which currently falls on September the 11th, corresponding to August 29th in the Julian calendar. Eastern Christianity honors him on June the 11th, and the Catholic Church honors him on August 24th. Bartholomew the Apostle is remembered in the Church of England, and with a festival on the 24th of August. The Armenian Apostolic Church honors St. Bartholomew along with St. Thaddeus as its patron saints. Bartholomew is English for Bar Talmai, son of Talmai, or farmer, son of the furrows. Bartholomew is listed among the 12 apostles of Jesus in the 3 synoptic gospels: Matthew chapter 10 verses 1 to 4, Mark chapter 3 verses 13 to 19, and Luke chapter 6 verses 12 to 16, and also appears as one of the witnesses of the ascension in Acts chapter 1 verse 4, 12, and 13. On each occasion, however, he is named in the company of Philip. He is not mentioned by the name Bartholomew in the Gospel of John, nor are there any early acta, the earliest being written by a pseudepigraphical writer, Pseudo-Abdias, who assumed the identity of Abdias of Babylon, and to whom is attributed the Saint Theory and Pseudo-Abdias manuscripts. In art, Bartholomew is most commonly depicted with a bead and curly hair at the time of martyrdom. According to legends, he was skinned alive and beheaded, so is often depicted holding his flayed skin or the curved flensing knife with which he was skinned. Thus he is remembered and approved as saint of leather makers. Bartimaeus. The Gospel of Mark tells of the cure of a man named Bartimaeus, healed by Jesus as he is leaving Jericho. The Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Luke include different versions of this story. The Gospel of Mark, chapter 10, verse 46 to 52, tells of the cure of a blind beggar named Bartimaeus, literally meaning the son of Timaeus. He is one of the few recipients of healing whose names evangelists let us know. Oleg Malenko attributes this detail to the fact that these people have been definitely saved and served the church in their lifetime, unlike those whose names evangelists did not disclose. Baruch. Baruch, meaning blessed, is a masculine name among Jews, used from biblical times to the present, which is sometimes used as a surname. It is also found, though more rarely, among Christians, chiefly among Protestants, who use Old Testament names, except for its use as a name. This is also related to Beraka, or Braka, which is a Jewish blessing. The root BRK, meaning blessing, is also present in other Semitic languages. The most common Arabic form is the passive form Mubarak, but the form Barak is also used. Benedictus is a Latin name with similar meaning. Baruch Spinoza, or Benedictus de Spinoza. Baruch ben Neriah was an aide to the prophet Jeremiah. Baruch, son of Zabbai, was one of Nehemiah's helpers in repairing the walls of Jerusalem. And Baruch, son of Kol-Hoseh, was a member of the tribe of Judah who settled in Jerusalem. Barzillai. Barzillai, or Barzillai, the Gileadite of Rogelim, was 80 years old at the time of Absalom's revolt against King David. Barzillai supplied provisions for David's army at Mahanaim in 2 Samuel chapter 17, verses 27 to 29. After the death of Absalom, being an old man, he was able to accompany the king back to Jerusalem, but brought Chimham to David for the return journey in 2 Samuel chapter 19, verses 31 to 37. Another figure who married one of Barzillai's daughters was called Barzillai as a result in Ezra chapter 2, verse 61, and Nehemiah chapter 7, verse 63, and in the Esdras chapter 5, verse 38, he is called Zorzalus. Basemath. Basemath, meaning sweet smelling or sweet smile, is a figure in the book of Genesis. She was the daughter of Ishmael, or as in Genesis chapter 26 verses 34 and 35, Elon the Hittite, the niece of Isaac and the third wife of Esau. In Genesis chapter 36 verses 2 and 3, before Esau married his third wife, Esau had named one of his Canaanite wives after Basemath, probably because he knew of her, since they were cousins. The wife whom Esau named as Basemath was Adah the Hittite, his first wife. So after he married his third wife, Esau changed Basemath to the Ishmaelites' name to Mahalath. Esau sought this union with a non-Canaanite in an effort to reconcile his relationship with his parents, namely with his father Isaac, whose blessing he sought. In Genesis chapter 28, verses 6 to 9. However, there is no record of his parents' approval for the union of Esau and Basemath, or Mahalath. She bore a son, Reuel, to Esau. In Genesis chapter 36, verse 4, and in 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 15. Basemath is the daughter of King Solomon. Bathsheba. Bathsheba was the daughter of Eliam. In 2 Samuel chapter 11, verse 3, and as Amiel in 1 Chronicles chapter 3, verse 5. And Eliam is mentioned in 2 Samuel chapter 23, verse 34, as the son of Ahithophel, who is described as the Gilonite. Bathsheba was the wife of Uriah the Hittite. David's first interactions with Bathsheba are described in 2 Samuel chapter 11, but are omitted in the books of Chronicles. David, while walking on the roof of his palace, saw a very beautiful woman bathing. He ordered inquiries and found out that she was Bathsheba, wife of Uriah. He described her and later made her pregnant. In an effort to conceal his sin, he was in deep desire, as you can see. David summoned Uriah from the army with whom he was on campaign, in the hope that Uriah would have his way with her and think that the child belonged to him. But Uriah was unwilling to violate the ancient kingdom rule applying to warriors in active service. Rather than go home to his own bed, he preferred to remain with the palace troops. After repeated efforts to convince Uriah to have his way with Bathsheba, the king gave the order to his general Joab that Uriah should be placed on the front lines of the battle, where Uriah would be more likely to die. David had Uriah himself carry the message that led to his death. After Uriah had been killed, David married Bathsheba. David's action was displeasing to the Lord, who sent Nathan the prophet to reprove the king. after relating the parable of the rich man who took away the one little ewe lamb of his poor neighbor in 2 Samuel chapter 12 verses 1 to 6, and exciting the king's anger against the unrighteous act. The prophet applied the case directly to David's action with regard to Bathsheba. The king at once confessed his sin and expressed sincere repentance. Bathsheba's first child by David was struck with severe illness and died, unnamed a few days after birth, which the king accepted as his punishment. Nathan also noticed that David's house would be punished for Uriah's murder. That was one of his points. Bathsheba later gave birth to David's son Solomon. In David's old age, Bathsheba, based on David's promise, secured the succession to the throne by Solomon. Instead of David's elder surviving sons by his other wives, such as Chileab in 2 Samuel chapter 3 verses 1 to 6, Adonijah in 1 Kings chapter 1 verses 11 to 31, and others in 2 Samuel chapter 3 verses 1 to 6, David's punishment came to pass years later when one of David's much-loved sons, Absalom, led an insurrection that plunged the kingdom into civil war. Moreover, to manifest his claim to be the new king, Absalom had made love in public with 10 of his father's concubines, which could be considered a direct, tenfold divine retribution for David's taking the woman of another man in secret. That was in 2 Samuel chapter 16 verses 20 to 23. Bethsuha. In biblical names, the meaning of the name Bethsuha is the seventh daughter, the daughter of indulgence. Belial. Belial, a Benjamite, was one of David's 30 heroes who went to Ziklag. Mentioned in 1 Chronicles chapter 12 verse 5, the name derives from Baal and Jah. According to the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia, dated 1913, it means Yahweh is Lord. Beloth. As a Bible name, Beloth means citizen or cast under. Babai. Babai is the name of 3 Jews whose descendants came from the exile. In Ezra chapter 8 verse 11, of the sons of Babai, Zechariah the son of Babai, and with him 28 males. In Ezra chapter 10 verse 28, of the son of Babai, Jehonanah, Hananiah, Zabai, Athlai. And in Nehemiah chapter 10 verse 15, Bunni, Asgad, and Babai. Beshur. Beshur was the name of 2 individuals mentioned in the Bible. The second of 10 sons of Benjamin, according to Genesis chapter 46 verse 21 and 1 Chronicles chapter 7 verse 6. A son of Ephraim, according to Numbers chapter 26 verse 35. His descendants were referred to as Bachrites or Bachrites. Bechorath. Bechorath, son of Aphiah, of the tribe of Benjamin, was an ancestor of King Saul and of his commander Abner. According to Saul, his family was the least of the tribe of Benjamin. In 1 Samuel chapter 9. Bedad. Bedad is not seen in the Bible to my knowledge, but it is in its own right a biblical name, meaning by God. Badiah. In biblical names, the meaning of the name Badiah is the only Lord. Badan. Badan is named as one of the deliverers of Israelites in 1 Samuel chapter 12, verse 11. The name is said to be a contraction of Ben, Dan being the son of Dan, by which many suppose Samson is meant, as the Targum reads. The Septuagint, Syriac, and Arabic, however, refer to the name as Barak instead of Badan. And the two later versions list in that verse Samson as the last deliverer of Israelites instead of Samuel. These readings appear to be genuine, for it is not probable that Samuel would enumerate himself. The letters forming Badan Barak in the Hebrew are very similar, and a scribe might easily have written the one for the other, and the mistake might well have been perpetuated. Badan is the name of a descendant of Manasseh in 1 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 17. Biliada, meaning the Lord knows, a son of David in 1 Chronicles chapter 14, verse 7. Beelzebub. Beelzebub, or Beelzebul, or Beelzebub, or Beelzebub, or Baal-Zebub, is a name derived from a Philistine god, formerly worshipped in Ekron, and later adopted by some Aramaic religions as a major demon, or the devil. The name Beelzebub is associated with the Canaanite god Baal. In theological sources, predominantly Christian, Beelzebub is another name for Satan. He is known in demonology as one of the 7 princes of hell. The Dictionary Infernal describes Beelzebub as being capable of flying, known as the Lord of the Flyers, or the Lord of Flies. Bera. In biblical names, the meaning of the name Bera is a well declaring. Beri, or Biri. There are 2 biblical figures named Biri. The etymology of Biri is given as belonging to a fountain, but as expounder by the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia, and well according to the Holman Bible Dictionary, according to the book of Hosea, Biri was the father of the prophet Hosea. Jewish tradition says that he only uttered a few words of prophecy, and as they were insufficient to be embodied in a book by themselves, they were incorporated in the book of Isaiah, verses 19 and 20 of the 8th chapter. As such, Biri is considered a prophet in Judaism. Biri was sometimes identified with Bera, 1 Chronicles chapter 5, verse 6, who was taken into exile by the Assyrians. He is also considered holy by Muslims. The other Biri was the father of Judith, one of the wives of Esau, in Genesis chapter 26, verse 34. Behemoth. Behemoth is a beast from the biblical book of Job, and is a form of the primeval chaos monster created by God at the beginning of creation. He is paired with the other chaos monster, Leviathan, and according to later Jewish tradition, both would become food for the righteous at the end time. Metaphorically, the name has come to be used for any extremely large or powerful entity. Belial is a term occurring in the Hebrew Bible which later became personified as the devil, both in Jewish and Christian texts. Belshazzar meaning bell, protect the king, was the son and crown prince of Nabonidus, 556. That's the year circa 556. The last king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Through his mother, he might have been a grandson of Nebuchadnezzar II in 605 BC, though this is not certain, and the claims to kinship with Nebuchadnezzar may have originated from royal propaganda. Belshazzar played a pivotal role in the coup d'etat that overthrew the king, Labashi Marduk, 556 BC, and brought Nabonidus to power in 556 BC. Since Belshazzar was the main beneficiary of the coup, through confiscating and inheriting Labashi Marduk's estates and wealth, it is likely that he was the chief orchestrator. Through proclaiming his father as the new king, Belshazzar also made himself the first in line to the throne, as Nabonidus was relatively old at the time. Belshazzar could expect to become king within a few years. Nabonidus was absent from Babylon from 553 to 542 BC. In self-imposed exile at Tama in Arabia, for unknown reasons, for the duration of the decade-long absence of his father, Belshazzar served as regent in Babylon, a period which some historians characterize as a co-regency. Belshazzar was entrusted with many typical royal prerogatives, such as granting privileges, commanding portions of the army, and receiving offerings and oaths, though he continued to be styled as the crown prince. Marsari literally meaning son of the king, never assuming the title of king. Belshazzar also lacked many of the prerogatives of kingship. Most importantly, he was not allowed to preside over and officiate the Babylonian New Year's festival, which was exclusive and the exclusive right of the king himself. Belshazzar's fate is not known, but is often assumed that he was killed during the Cyrus the Great's Persian invasion of Babylonia in 539 BC. Presumably at the fall of the capital, Babylon, on the 12th of October 539 BC, Belshazzar appears as a central character in the story of Belshazzar's feast in the biblical book of Daniel. Recognized by scholars as a work of historical fiction, Daniel's Belshazzar is not malevolent, but in later Jewish tradition, Belshazzar was presented as a tyrant who oppresses the Jewish people. Benaiah. The most famous Benaiah in the Bible is the son of Jehoiada, who came from the southern Judean town of Casbeel. Benaiah was one of King David's men, or mighty men, commander of the 3rd Rotational Army Division. In 2 Samuel chapter 23 verse 20 and 1 Chronicles chapter 27 verse 5. He helped David's son Solomon become king, killed Solomon's enemies, and served as the chief of Solomon's army. On Solomon's instructions, he is responsible for the deaths of Adonijah in 1 Kings chapter 2 verse 25, Job in 1 Kings chapter 2 verse 34, and Shimei in 1 Kings chapter 2 verse 46. He was in charge of the Cherethites and Pelethites. Several verses in 1 Kings chapter 1 make clear that Benaiah was closely associated with Solomon's party and excluded from Adonijah's faction. He is also mentioned in 2 Samuel chapter 8 verse 18, chapter 23 verses 20 to 23, and chapter 30, and 1 Chronicles chapter 27 verses 5 and 6. Ben-Hadad the first, son of Tabramon and grandson of Hezion, was king of Aram Damascus between 885 BC and 865 BC, a figure known only from the Old Testament. Ben-Hadad was reportedly a contemporary of kings Baasha and Ahab of the kingdom of Israel, and Asa of the kingdom of Judah. According to the biblical book of Kings, Asa called on Ben-Hadad to aid him in attacking northern Israel, while Baasha restricted access to Jerusalem through border fortifications. Ben-Hadad took the towns of Ijon, Dan, Abel-Beth-Machach, and all Shinneroth, with all the land of Naphtali, in 1 Kings chapter 15 verse 20. This acquisition gave Aram Damascus control of the trade route to southern Phoenicia. By the time of the reign of Ahab, the area was back in Israelite hands. This was part 4 of the biblical name starting with B. Adonai Nisi, the Lord is our banner. Remember, if you like these videos, please click on the red subscribe button below and the bell for more. God's blessings be upon this message and us all.